Do you need help with displaying your anime figure collection?
Today we're sharing a couple of tips and tricks on how to make your anime figure collection shine. I'm Kyoko.
And I'm Zafira. Even the best collection can look messy or boring when the display doesn't complement its figures. In our experience, small little details can help elevate the overall look of your collection.
All of the tips shared in this video are just our personal opinions, and in the end the most important thing is that you display the figures the way you like it.
When it comes to organizing your figures, you have a couple of options in which you can categorize your figures. The most obvious thing to do would be to arrange your figures by show or characters. This is usually the route we take when displaying our figures, for example here with our little Attack on Titan corner.
Sometimes you only have one figure of a character or a show. In that case, you could organize the figures by colors. I have a couple of black and white figures which don't go very well with the rest of my collection. So I decided to put them on a separate shelf, and I started with my darker black butler figures and used Megumi as a transition because he's both black and white. So he will create a nice blend between the darker and the lighter figures.
Another option to display your figures is to put them in themed arrangements, for example swimsuit figures, wedding dresses, kimonos and stuff like that. In my case, I have a couple of figures in white dresses, so I like to put them together.
Since figures come in a large variety of sizes and styles, you could also use this for displaying your figures. For example, putting all of your Nendoroids next to each other looks very cute and cohesive. I also put all of my 1/7 scales next to each other, and that looks very cool as well.
One rule you can follow when displaying your figures is to create triangles and using uneven numbers of figures when grouping them together. I, for example, like to arrange my figures in groups of 3 or 5. For example, like with these prize figures, as you can see, I used the height and the size of the bases to create a nice triangular shape and elevate one figure, which makes the whole arrangement much more interesting and dynamic. And that leads us to the next point, using different heights.
When displaying your figures, you should always take the height into consideration. Playing with different heights can help achieve a more exciting and interesting look for your collection. Acrylic rises can be very useful to achieve the desired effect, but other things can work just as well. For example, my Lord of the Rings Blu-rays have the same effect and they even fit the theme. Be creative and think outside the box. For example, for my Gumi Nendoroid, I just used an empty face cream jar to elevate her.
Take a look at each figure individually. Not every figure looks good from every angle. For example, if you have a figure that looks down, it may be better to display it on a higher shelf. But also keep in mind how different poses will work together. Some figures have postures that are slightly turned. This Sakura Miku, for example, is almost turned sideways to the right. Since I decided to display her with these two, I need to take that into consideration. Putting her on the left side would lead the focus away from the shelf. If I put her on the right side, her arm will accentuate the mermaid Miku in the middle. Now the arm and the leg of the bunny Miku have the same effect. This way the composition looks much more harmonic.
It is important that every figure has room to shine on its own. Cramping a ton of figures into a tiny space can look messy very easily and take away from each figure. But too much space between the figures can look empty and boring. Try finding the right balance with using the tips and tricks from before. In this case, for example, Kyoko's spear is filling out the empty space around Madoka's legs perfectly. I also like to use Nendoroids and smaller figures between my scales to fill the gaps. This creates different levels again and looks much more interesting to the eye. Overall, these are the methods that we use when displaying our figures.
If this video was helpful, or if you have any other tips and tricks, please let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching and goodbye!
Bye!